Hey guys, so today we are going to be microblading Liz's brows, finally. She's been wanting this for a long time. She already has quite a bit of hair on her brow, but we're just gonna really focus on filling in kind of underneath the arch area where she has less hair, and kind of just build up her shape a little bit more. So we are gonna get started here. This is how I set up my mayo stand before I get started. Only disposables on here. Never put anything non-disposable because the Ohio Board of Health is very particular about it. So anything that's non-disposable, I keep back here behind me. Everything that is disposable, I keep on this tray. And then what we're first gonna do with Liz, we've already talked about what kind of brow she's going for. She doesn't really want to add too much onto the eyebrows. She wants to just give a little more underneath here where she's lacking that hair. So we're gonna start by measuring her. When I started out, I used to use these. They're kind of like an eyebrow sticky measuring tape that you can put on the forehead. But eyebrow microblading is kind of like artwork, so I found I do a little better without using this. And we use a ColourPop pencil because it's very thin and fine, so I'm able to kind of trace around and make a perimeter of where we're going to draw the brows. And first, so we want to line Liz up here, mainly with the tear trough. You can kind of use the nose, but everyone's nose I've found is pretty much crooked. Symmetry is the most important thing. We'll draw a line upwards here. And then from the side of the face, you go from the nose to about where the corner of your eye is. You can go a little further out where the orbital bone kind of stops here. And we'll draw a line there. And we'll clean these lines up as we go, so they're gonna look funny for right now. Now we'll just use those lines to basically create a nice straight line across here. The most important part here is making them parallel in the front part of the brow. That will always lead for a good shaped brow. Anytime you have an oopsies with your drawing, you can just use a Q-tip. I put some alcohol on there and I'll just erase it.
Where do people say it hurts the most?
Right here on the arch. Because you know, that's like the boniest area. You still have a little bit of fat pad here, but this. But everyone's different. Some people are like, this is the worst. And I'm like, I don't know anymore. I think it's where your nerves are specifically placed in your face. So it's usually the younger women who have more of a problem with this. And I'm also gonna hand you a mirror while I'm doing this too, because I don't want you to look at them 100 times. I always tell people it's the perimeter within this, so this always looks much bigger than what it's actually gonna be.
Good,
so
I like
think, you know, in between these lines.
Yeah, I like it.
So I'll add only a very small amount in the front, because we want that to be very thin and fluffy, I guess you could say. And then through here's my most focus. And we'll add a few up here to, you know, get those hairs used up.
Perfect, I like it.
Nice, okay. Yeah, so you wanna hold it, or if it's uncomfortable. As far as evenness and everything, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, this is the before And if you are going to be doing injections to numb your client, which we're now going to start offering, you want to have it drawn in first because Dr. Harper said apparently you can have, I don't know, is it like a
droop the brow a little bit?
You could droop the brow with the lidocaine injection. So it's very important to get it drawn in first so that what you have drawn in, we know, is already going to look good. So when they inject, you won't have a problem. So I'm going to let Jessie do her thing. So after we just had Jessie inject the lidocaine around her brow bone here, we're gonna wait maybe up to about 5 minutes until it all sets in. Then we're ready to start microblading. So now Liz should definitely be numb at this point. We did add a little bit more lidocaine underneath here because we kind of tested and she was still feeling some. Totally okay to do. And now I've got our shape drawn in. The next step will be to pick out the color that we want to do. Color we want to always base off of their skin type, not just the hair color that they already have on their eyebrows, because oily skin types do not retain the pigment as well as dry skin types. A lot of times I'll tell people you lose at least 30 to 50% of the pigment from this session until your perfecting session, and just depending on your skin type. Oily skin types, I definitely expect them to lose at least 50%. Drier skin types, maybe the 20 to 30 percentile range. So just different per everybody. We already talked about her skin type though. Liz said she's a little bit more on the drier side. In that case, you want to stick to pretty much the exact color of what her hair is on her eyebrows already, because she's probably not going to have as much fading as someone with oily skin. Oily skin types, I tend to do a shade or two darker, and that's something I've learned that's very, very, very important with microblading. It's a very finicky specialization. And now what we're gonna do, I'm gonna show you first the blades we're gonna pick. I have 3 different kinds of blades. There's a U-curved blade. This is one that we'll normally use for someone with much more thin skin, because it creates very wispy strokes, and you don't need to go as deep in the skin if you have thinner skin types or less oily skin types as well. Then we have a 12 angled blade. This is the one that I pretty much always use on most people. And then we have a 14 needle angled blade. This is for extra thick skin types. So usually anybody who's Cherokee, they usually tend to have thicker skin. So I would use this, or very oily skin types. But we're gonna use the 12 angled blade on Liz. And we're gonna pick her color. And what I like to do, I put the color kind of on the back of my hand here, put a couple blebs, and don't just show your client a color and be like, hey, pick it out. You should be helping them to pick out this color. But you like to also put them on their head so you can see what it looks like with their skin tone and with their eyebrows. And you can always mix your colors up if you can't get one right with just this bottle per se. It doesn't match and you can't find one that matches perfectly. Mix your colors until you find the right shade, which with her I did, and I like this color the most, which was a mixture between ash brown and taupe.
2 colors I'm usually between when I'm penciling.
Is it? Yeah, well, perfect.
Perfect.
So look, I already knew. Do you have, where's the mirror?
Right here.
Aha. All right, so this is ash brown, this is taupe, and this is like the mix between them.
Yeah.
So, but see how it matches your brow color pretty much perfectly.
Yeah.
And the good thing is with this is if we ever have any fading with the color, when you come back for your perfecting session, we can always go darker.
Perfect.
We can always go bigger. We can always add more shape. So less is always more in the first session.
Okay. And how long after is the perfecting session?
And your perfection session is 4 to 6 weeks from now.
Okay.
And definitely important to wait that 4 to 6 weeks, because it does actually take that long for the brows to heal, and for everything to kind of the color will disappear and then it'll kind of reappear, because this is a semi-permanent eyebrow tattoo. And all that means is that we're going only in your epidermal layers of your skin. We're not going beneath in the dermal, so it's not like a normal tattoo. So when people compare this to normal tattoo, I'm like, it's nothing like it. Drop everything that you know about a normal tattoo. It doesn't heal the same. The aftercare is definitely not the same. You don't want to be putting anything on it, no Vaseline. You don't want to be cleaning the area because you want to keep it dry and you don't want to touch it, so that you don't move around that pigment that we settled into the epidermis. Now we're ready to actually microblade. Now that we've got her drawn in, her colors picked out, her numbing cream, and injections. Since we're training, we want to make sure she doesn't feel anything, so we don't have any silly faces or...
You don't have to rush.
Yeah, and so I don't have to rush. I would say definitely the most important thing about when you are microblading someone is kind of prepping them in the beginning and letting them know what their expectations are with their skin type and how the healing process is. And this is why we also send everybody home with an aftercare sheet that has like an emoji face page on it that kind of tells you what stages you'll be going through. So as I said earlier, there'll be a point where they disappear, but it's just your skin healing over top of the pigment, but it scares people to death. So like, I just paid $500 or $600 for this. It's gone. There's only really two things that you actually need: the handle and the blade, both disposable. Put it in here, tighten it up, angle it like so. Make sure it's nice and tight in there. So that is the 12 needle angled blade. And I'll get my little pigment ring here. The two colors that we had mixed up for Liz, which is taupe and ash brown. So we're gonna put about half and half of each in here. And then make sure you don't put them on your tray. Sanitation. And I always keep a spray bottle for your hands of alcohol, so you can keep everything sterile, because we are cutting into the skin. It's different than a needle, poke, or stick. Very important to make sure you're keeping your hands sterile. Last step, I gotta mix this up. Are you ready, Liz?
I'm ready.
She should be good and numb though, so I'm not worried. Protection for me. I'm gonna start on her right brow here. And essentially what we're gonna do, we're gonna go from side to side, so right brow, and let that kind of all soak in and let the pigment settle down into the hair strokes we create, and then we'll go to left side, right side, left side. It's a fun little tedious process. Let's start in the front of her brow here. Another fun thing with microblading, mostly everybody sneezes, because all of your nerves up here and all your sinuses are all pretty much in your forehead. So you'll definitely have people who sneeze, you'll have people whose eyes are gonna water, you have people who twitch. And another important thing to do while you're microblading, follow the direction of their hair. If they have no hair, a little different, you kind of have to create it. But with Liz, I can see exactly which way her hair is going. You want to follow. And as I did that part there, essentially what I did, I created an outline around her brows. So I mainly focused on getting hairs on the top and on the bottom here so that we have kind of a line. I didn't focus too much on putting hairs in between because, as you can see, I can't see what I'm doing anymore, and you don't want to overlap your hair strokes. So we have to wipe off. Gets everywhere, but you're going to be wiping off where your outline was. That's why it's important to create your own outline with the hair strokes you just put in. Another good word of advice for you microblading trainees: always let your clients know to not drink any alcohol a couple nights prior. Don't take any blood thinning medications unless they're prescribed, obviously, but no like ibuprofen prior to this treatment, and try to avoid it for a good 3 to 5 days prior, because anything that's a blood thinner is going to make it really hard for you to do your job because there's so much blood and you have to wipe every 5 seconds. Now we're gonna give her right eyebrow a break. Gets a little more sensitive kind of as you go, but you also have to set the pigment in. I call it baking. I put it on the eyebrow and you let it kind of just seep into those hair strokes we've created. Kind of want to rub it in a little bit so it gets down in there. Now we're gonna get her left brow started. And same thing on this side over here. Focus on getting this outline created where we have our perimeter drawn around her brows here. Pretty much everybody flinches, so prepare yourself for that, and that's also why you want to hold them tight with your fingers here and your hand usually placed there. There's definitely sensitive spots. It's usually around the arch and the tail side where people tend to complain about sensitivity or pain. You can see all of that under there is tattooed. All of that underneath here. She has quite a bit of hair, but look how nice this shape is looking. gonna do one more pass on this side, then we're gonna put pigment on there and bake it, and then there might be one pass just to fine tune each side, make sure everything looks good. Okay, now we're gonna actually bake her brows. We're gonna cover them with lots and lots of pigment, and then we're gonna put Saran Wrap on top. And then we're gonna apply a little bit of heat with our hands. Heat will help the skin expand a little bit, so it'll spread open those hair strokes we've created and help to let it absorb much better inside, or not inside, but help the pigment to seep down basically into those hair strokes that we create.
So how long does this generally last?
For everyone, it's a little different. I always tell people up to about 2 years for most all of it to kind of completely disappear, but also different per skin type that way. So we say anywhere from 1 to 2 years, and usually you'll need regular touch-ups anywhere from 6 to 12 months. It's usually oily skin types need to come back around 6 months or 9 months. Drier skin types tend to need to come back around 12 to 18 months. So, and everyone's like, well, when do I know when I need a touch-up? Basically, once you see that your eyebrows aren't as filled in or as sharp looking as they did when we first did them, or I have people that come back religiously every 6 months because they like them to look really dark and filled in. So that's also fine. But whenever you just feel like they're looking a little dull and not as full, you can come back and we can do a touch-up whenever, and we call that a color pop session. Let me get some gloves again. So like I said, we're gonna apply some heat to Liz's brows. This trick helps so much. Everyone's like, I don't feel like this helps a lot. You can tell the difference when you do it and when you don't.
Hey guys, I'm here at Juvly Aesthetics getting microblading on my brows with master esthetician Leslie.
Hey guys.
Who is our brow artist. So right now I know they look really nice. This is, she calls this the baking phase of it, where we're setting the dye and the color in there. And then afterwards we'll take it off and we'll see the end result.
Yay, brows! Let's cover with all the pigment again. Feels like sunburn on the eyebrows, right?
Kinda, yeah.
It's just the dye or pigment. It's the nice burny feeling of it soaking into the skin. Okay, look how pretty this looks right now. Isn't this great? This is why you don't show people mid microblading, because they're like, oh my God, what'd you do to my eyebrows? We still have to do the perfection session, so if people get to a sensitive point and you're not completely finished, it's okay, because they have to come back in 4 to 6 weeks. But that session is much quicker. It only takes about 15 minutes to do the touch-up session, so people are much more happy to hear that than they are about this part. So we're gonna bake her one last time.
So what do we do with everything afterwards?
So for your aftercare, it is going to be extremely, extremely important that you keep your eyebrows dry for 48 hours, definitely, and then as dry as possible for up to 2 weeks. So when you tell people this, they're always very, very confused. They're like, what, up to 2 weeks? I don't understand. How do I keep them dry? It's the most important part about the healing process with microblading, because like I was telling you guys earlier, it's not like a tattoo where you put like Aquaphor or something on it and keep it moist afterwards. You actually want the eyebrow tattoo to oxidize and to dry heal, so that that pigment stays in the brow, since we're just in your epidermal layers. If you get them wet, it's like a cut, so it actually will pull open the skin and the pigment will flake or fall out, which is what we definitely want to refrain from doing. So try to have them keep their brows dry as long as possible for up to 2 weeks. Also very important to not work out or have strenuous activity for definitely 48 hours, and also up to 2 weeks for that too. I just tell people, try to be as best as you can about it. Don't go run a marathon in the next 2 weeks, you know. It's okay if you get a little bit of working out in. Make sure it's not after 48 hours. And it's also not the sweating that I'm worried about when it comes to working out. It's actually when you are getting your blood rate up and pumping, your skin heats up and it expands that way too. And since again, it is a cut, if you expand your skin, it's going to pull it apart. That pigment's going to fall out. You're not going to retain as much that way, and then we're going to have to do a lot more in your second session. So please take care of them afterwards. So just make sure you go over all of this with your client. Let them know that it is important. If they need to have tricks how to keep their eyebrows dry, there are these visors. They're called baby shower visors. You can actually buy on Amazon. They literally just cover this part of your head, so that essentially you can take a shower and everything without getting your eyebrows wet. So you can shower like normal, or I tell them take baths or use a handheld shower head, so that you're not getting your eyebrows wet. And if you do get them wet, just make sure you dab and kind of dry them off. Also, since you do have to keep them so dry and you can't wash around them, be sanitary. That is one of the biggest things to make sure to warn your client of. Don't put makeup on your eyebrows. You're gonna want to, because you go through a weird stage and process with the healing with this, but if you put eyebrow makeup on there, or powder, or an eyeliner brush or anything, you're gonna infect your eyebrows, and then that's bad news. There's been a lot of stories lately about people getting their eyebrows microbladed and infected because they're putting makeup on or around their brows or not taking care of them. It is an open cut, so treat it as such.
Should I, like with lotion, try to avoid that area and everything?
Absolutely. Okay. So I always tell people just apply from eyes down. Okay. And if you want to apply up here, totally fine, but nowhere near the brows, at least a couple fingers above.
Okay.
Ready to see your brows?
Ready.
All right, so we'll take off the Saran wrap. And they will be darker today and the next couple days too, so just be aware. Yay, brows! One side. Yay! Yay. That's all, folks. Now there's no more torture. Just kidding. It was easy.
Yeah, no, I love them. Seriously.
Look good. Yay!